Hello, folks, and welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. We spent an hour with former President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago earlier today. He was in very good spirits. Right after our interview, he was off to Georgia to again help raise private assistance in the aftermath of the destruction and loss of life from Hurricane Helene. Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia was going to be with Mr. Trump in Augusta. And tomorrow, he is returning to Butler, Pennsylvania, at the scene of the attempted assassination back on July 13th. He and I had a very good, long sit-down this morning, and we're going to play all of it for you. The first segment coming right up was about the jobs report, tariffs, and, of course, drill, baby, drill. Let's get right to it, and take a listen, please. Roll tape. Mr. President, welcome back to the Kudlow Show. We appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Larry.
I want to begin. Today's jobs numbers come out, and the top line was very solid jobs report. Americans are working. But, you know, you look under the hood, it's the same stuff. I just want to read a couple of things. Full-time jobs down almost 500,000. Part-time jobs up 800,000. Manufacturing jobs down again. 825,000 native-born jobs lost, 1.2 million foreign-born jobs gained. These are uncomfortable statistics. There's something wrong. There's something unbalanced about all these numbers and where the country's going.
Well, especially so since, as you see, and I guess you probably read one of the numbers where the illegal migrants that are coming into the country are getting the jobs. They're getting most of the jobs. And the citizens aren't getting the jobs. And the other thing that you don't know what to believe anymore, because 818,000 jobs 2 months ago was a fraud. They put in 818,000 extra jobs, and it got wiped out. They said they made a mistake. That wasn't a mistake. That was done on purpose. And it was supposed to come out, that number, the wipeout was supposed to be after the election. But you had a whistleblower that came out and announced that they defrauded the country. So you say, like, how does that happen? I've never heard of a thing. I've heard of they're off by 10,000, 15,000. They were off by 818,000 jobs. So when is that going to come out?
Yeah, well, it's probably be revised down. I mean, it's hard to know. We've never seen anything like it, as you point out.
You've never seen numbers like this the last 7 months.
And again, manufacturing jobs continue to decline, and the manufacturing ISM purchasing managers continues to decline. We haven't had any manufacturing jobs in 2 years. We're in a manufacturing slump, probably a manufacturing recession. Is this attributable, do you think, to Biden-Harris policies?
Yes. It's attributable to the fact that other countries are ripping us off, including Mexico, and a lot of them, China always, but Mexico's really doing a big number on us. We have companies moving down to Mexico. They're making product. They're selling it in, and nobody's talking to them. Nobody's speaking about it. Nobody's putting tariffs on them. If you put tariffs on those companies, you wouldn't have them leaving our country. They're leaving us, going to Mexico, right across the border, building a plant and selling things back into our country. You can't let them do that. That's what tariffs are for. You put tariffs on, they won't be doing that. And it's like not complicated. It's really simple.
So your plan, we're going to get to the tax hikes for Kamala Harris, but your plan, you will offer 15%, 21 to 15% business tax rate, which would be the lowest I think we've ever had in this country, and make us among the low, probably the lowest, or maybe the second lowest around the entire world. That's how competitive we'd be. But you got to produce it here. You've got to produce it here. Now, I think that would go a long way towards solving some of these various problems about foreign-born versus native-born, manufacturing jobs and things of that sort. Tell me more about that vision. Tell me more what goes along with that.
So first of all, I brought it from 39 down to 21, okay? It was 39, which was way too high and not competitive, and we were doing very badly. I brought it down to 21. And interestingly, just before I get to the 15, at 21, we did much more business the following year than we did at 39. In other words, we took in more revenue with 21 than we did because it was like, that was after the tax cuts. They call them the Trump tax cuts. which were phenomenal, and just about everybody admits that. Now I'm going to take it from 21 to 15, but you have to make your product here. And I'm going to guard them because a part of it is, as per your first question, we have to guard our companies. Now they're going to have low taxes, low environmental costs, low energy, because I'm going to get the energy, drill, baby, drill. We're getting the energy way down. We'll have the lowest energy. We're going to have low environmental costs because we're going to move. Look, people are tied up for years on environmental. I'm going to do an expedited environmental review.
Permitting, quick permitting.
Permitting.
You had it once in the first term,
one of the reasons,
and then they undid it.
I mean, I was approving plants at levels that nobody's ever seen. We're talking about plants that normally wouldn't get done. But then if you do your product here, you go from 21 to 15. If you don't, you pay 21. 15 makes us the most competitive. There are some countries, but not like this. There are a few countries that are slightly less. But 15 makes us so competitive. Everyone's going to come rushing into our country, but we're going to protect them once they're here with tariffs, so that if somebody wants to make their product outside of our country and sell it in, they have to pay a tariff, a substantial tariff, depending on, all different, because it depends on the country. It depends on where they are, how they're doing. And like we have a case of India, which charges us massive, massive tariffs. You look at Harley Davidson and companies that went to India because they didn't want to pay 150, 200%. Brazil charges us a lot. China, always China. And, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. No president ever took in 10 cents, not even, and I mean it, 10 cents. We never took in any money. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. And now China's totally out of control. We have a deficit with China now that I've never seen anything like it, what they're doing with China. But we have a deficit with the country. We will take it from a deficit. We'll knock that down. When you start charging people tariffs, our country was the richest when we were doing tariffs. That was the richest. This was in the 1880s and 90s. We were proportionately, if you go back to the dates and you look, our country was so rich, we didn't know what to do with all the money we had. They had committees, the Great Tariff Committee of 1887. This was a committee that was set up to, where do you give all this? What do you do with all the money?
William McKinley.
That was under McKinley.
He was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. The McKinley Tariff of 1890.
He was a big tariff.
I read the whole biography. It was 600 pages.
Well, he made money, and Roosevelt spent it. So Roosevelt gets credit for being a great president. McKinley was actually a great president. He was assassinated. You know why he was assassinated? Because he was charging all these countries money, probably. Who the hell knows? But we were so rich. We had so much money. They had committees set up on what to do with all the money. Wouldn't that be nice if we had that now? Now we give it away and we don't have it.
If you make money on these tariffs, would you then allocate it to lower taxes?
Lower taxes and paying off debt.
Yeah. How about this?
And you will pay off a lot of debt.
What about this idea? Let's come back to the 15% corporate rate, which would be phenomenal. I mean, you'd win the global race for capital. You'd win the global race.
Well, you have to, but you have to do other things.
Money would come pouring in here.
Yeah.
But you mentioned John Deere Company. It's a venerable, old, great American company.
Yeah.
But if they're going to move plants to Mexico and then try to sell stuff back to the U.S., sneak in under, for example, the USMCA tariff schedule, you would charge them a 200% tariff.
Or 100%.
All right,
enough.
100%.
I would charge them enough that it would no longer make sense to go to Mexico.
And so they wouldn't do it.
They moved a big operation to Mexico. And they come in and they don't have to pay almost pay very little tax. So they're going to make it in Mexico and they're going to sell it in here. And we get killed. All we do is lose jobs. And by the way, that's been happening for years. I stopped it during mine. Then we had to fix COVID. We had to work on the COVID situation. But we had the greatest economy in history. Companies were moving back in like nobody's ever seen. Everything was great.
So that's how
we had the greatest economy in history.
That's how you'd negotiate, though. That's the point I'm sort of driving at.
John Deere
John Deere won't do it because you're threatening. I mean, you will jack up their tariffs, okay? They won't do it.
It wouldn't be a threat.
Now, to some extent,
in fact,
you're negotiating right now by saying this on the campaign trail, all right? You have an excellent chance of becoming president. They're getting the message. So this is where you will use tariffs to negotiate. sometimes on trade, in this case, maybe on other things like remain in Mexico or perhaps China or perhaps other countries. I don't think people understand that. That's why I'm raising the question.
A tariff is a beautiful thing, but it's got a bad image. It needs you to fix the image. A tariff, we stop wars with tariffs. I mean, I had cases where I told a country they were being very aggressive with another country. It had nothing to do with us. I just don't like seeing dead people, okay? And they were going to go to war. And I said, if you go to war, and they do a lot of business with the United States, I'm putting 100% tariff on everything you do, any business you do with us. No, 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 this has nothing to do. I said, it does have. I stopped a war. Will I get Nobel Prizes? Never. I mean, look what we did with the Abraham Accords, how good that was. But you can stop wars with tariffs. The word tariff, if properly used, not stupidly used, but we used them, and that was when our country was the richest. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, but you had the Depression in Well, the tariffs were put on in 1932. The Depression had long started. We went to the income tax system. We would be able to cut taxes for the people in this country and charge other countries for the use of our country, for the pillage of our country, for the taking of our jobs, because that's what they're doing. And nobody's protected our country. So when I say the 15%, and I had a lot of calls when I gave the speech and mentioned for the first time the 15, I had calls from the top analysts in the country, in the world, guys that are on your show, saying, where did you ever come up with that idea? Because the concept is 15, but you have to make your product here. Who gave you that idea? I said, I did. I gave me that idea. And they said, that idea is incredible. Because but you also have to protect that, because you have other countries, because they have no labor, no this, no that, that can come in and undercut you. And you know what they do, Larry? They undercut you. They drive your businesses out of business, and then they come in for a much higher number.
And you're still for reciprocity, the concept of reciprocity.
If somebody's charging us 100, we charge them 100. If China charges us on a car 100%, we charge them on a car 100%. Right. It's very simple. You know, I have a certain senator named Lindsey Graham, and he's not into this as much as he is other things.
Yes.
And he's a nice guy, good guy. And he's, you know, he cares. He loves the country. Even though he's a progressive, that's okay. These are minor details. But I said, so Lindsey, let's talk reciprocity. He talks about trade. He says, well, I'm not so much into trade. Tell me. I said, a country is charging us 100% tariff. We're going to charge them for a similar product 100% tariff. He goes, so they charge us, we charge them? You got my vote. You know, it's just simple. But we have guys, even in Congress, that for whatever reason, they don't want to do it. They actually say it's not fair trade. And I say, you're right, it's not fair trade, not fair trade for us. If we do this, we could become overnight a power again economically. We'll never be a power unless we do it. Unless we charge and unless we, because, you know, we've been giving foreign countries such benefits over the years. South Korea, we're basically paying for their military. You know, I had them paying billions of dollars. I went to them, I said, you're not paying anything. You got to pay. And I had them paying billions of dollars. And I hear Biden gave it up for whatever reason. But look at the advantage they have when you do that. We have been helping countries, we're still helping countries come back from the Second World War. We helped Korea come back from the Korean War. But we never did anything about it. In other words, we've been helping them for many, many decades. It's time we stop. They're a money machine. It's time we stop. And be fair, but it's time we stop. We are helping countries.
But you would work a deal out with
Yeah,
Korea.
work a deal. I could work a deal. I already did. I worked a deal, and then they gave it away.
You worked a deal out with
Biden
Japan
gave it away.
in your term also.
Biden gave it away.
Yes.
They agreed to pay me billions of dollars. It was all done. They started paying. Then when he came in, they cut it. And I hear that they're paying nothing again. They were they happy? Were they thrilled? Would they say they like me as opposed to like a Biden where they can get ripped off? You know, I can't imagine they'd say they love me.
South Korea is still an ally of the United States.
Sure, it's an ally, but, you know, on trade, it's not an ally.
Right.
In trade, it's an enemy.
Yeah.
It's an enemy. You know, some of the worst people we have in terms of trade are our allies. Japan is, you know, an ally, right? And I made a deal there with Abiy, who's a great man who got executed, who got, I mean, just horrible what happened. He was assassinated, but he was great. He was a great leader, too. And because I liked him so much, I probably made a softer deal than I would have normally made. But Japan, you know, rips us. They all rip. Almost every country rips us, and I stopped it. Now, China's one, but, you know, it's not just China.
Policy in a second term.
No, you have to protect. First, the companies move in, but then you have to protect them, and you protect them with tariffs. And they either pay the tariff or they move a plant to the United. I want China to build plants for car plants, as an example. I want China to build car plants here, not in Mexico.
Yes. Well,
And it's very simple. I mean, it's amazing that it's not done. And people come to me and they say, wow, that makes sense. But you have congressmen and people that are against it. I said to one man, he's no longer in politics. He happened to be from Pennsylvania, happened to be a senator from Pennsylvania. I said, so let me get this straight. If China's charging us 100% tariff for the similar product, could I charge them 75? No. Why? It's not free trade. I said, okay, could I charge them 50%? They're charging. No, it's not. Could I charge them 25 or even 10%? No, it's. I said, are you a stupid person or what's wrong with you? And he never ran for office again.
It becomes free trade.
Let me tell you, he never ran for office again.
I think theoretically, with reciprocity in trade negotiations,
Everybody gives up and you go back to nothing.
Yes.
Okay.
I know people.
This is a guy that people said was smart. He never ran for office because I wouldn't give him an endorsement. Because I said, anybody that says that. So think of it. We're paying them 100%. We make them pay 100%. Two things, one of two things are going to happen. We'll either collect the money or they're going to say, let's not pay any. Let's just go back to basics, right? But there are a lot of cases where they're charging us a tremendous amount. We charge them nothing. They're making a fortune. And by the way, hence we have a $35 trillion. We can start cutting into that. We can have, we have a tremendous deficit in this country. We've had it for for decades, right? But we have a tremendous deficit in this country. We can go to almost no deficit almost immediately.
Let's talk. You're right.
Larry, one thing. We've treated the world nice for a long time. We've been run by stupid people that allowed us to get into this situation. And it's about time these other countries play a little ball with us. And all I want is fairness. And if they're fair, we have something that you've never seen in this country till, I mean, literally the 1880s, the 1890s. But that was the time, you know, you hear about wealth, but we were giving a lot away for a long time. That was the time we were the richest. We were so rich. And it was all based on tariff. There was no income tax. It was all based on countries coming. And if you look at some of McKinley's words, he was very beautiful in the word, we will not allow the pillage of our country. And if they're going to take our jobs, and if they're going to do this and that, they've got to pay for it. And all I'm saying is that they've got to pay for it.
Joining me now is Florida's Attorney General, Ashley Moody. AG, thanks very much for calling in. I know you're in Tampa right now. What can you tell us about what's going on there and in the rest of the state as well?
Yeah, good morning, Maria. It's going to be a tough morning for Floridians waking up in the dark without power. I know it's difficult right now for law enforcement who are out on high water vehicles and even vehicles we call SHRPs that can even get farther than high water vehicles to rescue people. They're now just trying in the dark to figure out what are the best way to, when they do rescue people, what are the routes to be able to get to hospitals. This storm was unique in that it was hard to predict the effects of this storm. So we had about, I think, 125 tornado warnings, even before, throughout the storm and even before it hit. We know that there were at least 27 tornadoes. As you said, we've confirmed loss of life. And that was on a county on the east, towards the east of Florida, not even where the hurricane initially made landfall in Siesta Key. So the interesting part of this is, yes, it came on board as a Cat 3, but a lot of the power and rain was on the northern side. So Pinellas and Hillsborough, where the storm surge, and of course we'll learn more as the light comes up and you can see more, but it was such a powerful wind and rain event. Some are calling it a 1 in 1,000 year event, as it affected with over 2 hours with rain. So they were making rescues on first floors of apartments and at the north side of the storm. So it's going to be a tough morning here in Florida, and we appreciate you thinking of us and paying attention.
Oh, we're praying for you and all of the constituents there. AG, let me get your take on how the White House's response to this has been. How would you characterize it?
You know, we have been so focused on prepping the state and strategizing on how we're going to recover both life and property in the aftermath. You know, I don't think Governor DeSantis or I or anybody in leadership here are paying much attention to that right now. I know there were this accusation or something that Governor DeSantis wouldn't take Harris's calls, but you know, look, I don't think she's been involved in hurricane prep. I think he is so laser focused on getting the debris out from Helene, making sure everybody was safe. We were staged. I know she mentioned even monitoring price gouging, and that she was watching that, and I thought, that's so strange. I'm in charge of that here in Florida and have people on the ground. I don't know that we've spoken with her. So,
well, I mean, look, President Trump went to Georgia first when Helene first hit in Georgia, and you know there was a lot of talk about how Trump was on the ground first and the Democrats were slow to respond, but they're trying to change the conversation right now and saying that this is all misinformation around the government's response to these hurricanes. Watch this. Do we have the tape? They're saying that this is all misinformation, and yet we also know that Karine Jean-Pierre 2 years ago told us about how FEMA money was going to be available for illegal migrants. Watch this. Huh? AG Moody, we're waiting for these sound bites to play, and they're not playing. What would you say in terms of FEMA's response? Do you feel that FEMA has been on the ground and has had the wherewithal to give Florida, North Carolina, Georgia what they need?
Well, let me just say, after Helene hit, I was personally in these affected areas, and in areas where it hit and there were no homes left, just a concrete slab, there was an individual, a FEMA, at that Emergency Operations Center. I have met them here in Florida when we have had disasters, and I do know that Governor DeSantis is working with them closely. I will say, I heard yesterday the onslaught of accusations about misinformation, et cetera, coming out of a briefing from the White House about a hurricane approaching that was going to affect our state. And I thought to myself, this started with the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, saying we are running out of money.
That's right.
So, in terms of misinformation, instead of coming out so strongly and aggressively against others from the White House right before a storm, maybe they should just meet with him and say, what are you doing? Why are you spreading this information? And by the way, the people here in Florida, and Americans for that matter, they see when a blue state declares a disaster. When Massachusetts declared an emergency, a Biden-Harris emergency, because of the immigration issue, because they've opened up the border and they don't know how to pay and feed and shelter all these people that are now in our country, that's on them. That's not misinformation. And FEMA has to help with that. And so when Mayorkas comes out and says there's not enough money, of course people are going to assume that. So instead of starting this briefing warning as this destructive storm is approaching a state, why don't you start with, hey, I don't know, maybe explaining to the American people the misstatements from your own administration? That would be helpful if, in fact, they are misstatements.
Well, I think this is a really important point because no one would be talking about FEMA running out of money had it not been for Alejandro Mayorkas telling us that FEMA is not going to be able to get through the hurricane season because it's running out of money. And he told us that a week and a half ago. And since we found, Karine Jean-Pierre talking about how FEMA money is being used for illegal migrants. And she said it on tape in 2022. And so where the misinformation is, I have no idea, but they're clearly trying to change the conversation. Ashley Moody, it's good to talk with you. We send our best regards to all of the citizens affected by this hurricane. Thank you.
Israel's defense minister says all options are on the table when it comes to Iran. Rebecca Heinrich joins me now, security expert. Rebecca, will the Israelis attack Iranian nuclear facilities? And if they do, what would be the repercussions?
Well, Stuart, if they're going to do it, now is the time to do it. They have momentum on their side. There's basically what I consider 3 levels of attack. They can just basically attack the facilities that were related to this latest attack from Iran against Israel. That would be symbolic. And then you have an attack where they go after the oil fields, go after oil exports. And then you have the nuclear facilities they could attack. If they're going to do the second one, though, they might as well go for the third one. If Iran has been so bold and so willing to take on risk to attack Israel not once but twice with ballistic missiles, I don't understand how anybody can say at this point that Israel does not have the right and the strategic imperative to go after those nuclear facilities.
President Biden is urging restraint. Israel apparently is not listening to President Biden. Would they listen to a Harris if she was elected president?
I don't think that they would. I see both of them the same. She's the incumbent. She doesn't really have a much stronger presence or influence relative to President Biden. And Israel's going to do what it needs to defend itself. And as J.D. Vance just said, basically the Biden administration has tried to go both ways, tried to say they support Israel, but then they restrain Israel. Of course, they do that to the Ukrainians as well, say they support them and then restrain them. I would note, though, too, there's other countries that would be very grateful to the Israelis if they were to take out this nuclear facility. They won't say it publicly because of their populations, but the Gulf states, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, all of those countries would be relieved to know that the Israelis have finally taken out what is a threat to the entire region, which is the potential of the Iranians having a nuclear capability.
What is the role of Saudi Arabia in this? We really haven't heard much at all.
No, they're really caught between a rock and a hard place. They've got a population, obviously, that's going to be sympathetic to the Palestinians. But the Saudis and their current leadership wants to have a much more stable region. They still understand that the Iranians are the primary source of instability and terrorism throughout the Middle East. And so the Saudis have been a good partner to the United States, especially on energy. And really, the Biden administration came in and undid the good working relationship that the Trump administration had with the Saudis. We really need to get back to that. Work with the Gulf partners that want to help us squeeze the Iranians, bankrupt the Iranian regime, and enable the Israelis to defend themselves. One last point. You really got to make a difference between the Iran regime and the Iranian people. The Iranian people are the ones that have suffered the most from the totalitarianism of the Iran regime.
Got it. Rebecca Heinrich, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again real soon, I do hope. Elon Musk, he did make a special appearance at Trump's rally. Watch this.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA. We had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. This is no ordinary election. And a lot of people think maybe their vote doesn't count. This election could be decided by 1,000 votes, 500 votes. A tiny margin. So get everyone you know to register to vote.
Look who's here on a Monday morning. Charlie Hertz with us. What influence does Musk have on the Trump campaign, and does he attract voters?
Well, I think that it's a pretty good barometer of just how what a different candidate Donald Trump is. This is not your sort of normal campaign surrogate. Normally endorsements don't really matter, but Elon Musk is somebody who believes in the #1 green agenda of the Democrat Party. Elon Musk is somebody who has done more than any living human to provide electric vehicles but in the belief that this is what needs to be done to save the planet. Whether you believe that or not, he's been very effective at it, and he's pioneered a lot of technology in that area. And the idea that he looks at the two candidates and says, there's one person that I agree with this big agenda item on, and one person I don't agree with this big agenda on, I'm going to go with the guy that I don't agree with on this big agenda item because the other person is so incompetent and unserious and destructive to the country, I think that really does say a lot. And, I don't know whether in this hyper sort of, partisan atmosphere that we're living in right now, whether it does peel off a whole lot of voters, but it's got to make a lot of people stop and think, oh, my goodness, these are not normal candidates. And we've known for a long time Donald Trump's not sort of a normal candidate. But neither is Kamala Harris. She's not a normal candidate either. And I don't mean that, I mean that as a compliment to Trump, but not to her. And so I do think that it's possible that it makes people stop and think and reevaluate and sort of think bigger than politics and say, okay, this guy really is a transformative figure like Elon Musk, and maybe we should listen to him.
All right, Kamala Harris, Sunday night on 60 Minutes. Former President Trump, meanwhile, expected to hit the campaign trail almost every single day until Election Day, doing rallies, small speaking engagements, interviews, making retail stops. Joining me now is Trump 2024 National Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt. Caroline, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Your thoughts on the month ahead? We are exactly 4 weeks away from the election.
Yeah, that's right. 1 month away from Election Day, and our team is more confident than ever in President Trump's chances of victory. He is working incredibly hard. He will be on the road almost every single day between now and Election Day, barnstorming the country from Pennsylvania to Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina. You name it, he will be there, bringing his message to make this country safe and strong and wealthy again. President Trump is polling better than he ever has in 2020 and 2016. Kamala Harris is faring far worse than any Democrat who has ever run against President Trump. She's lagging behind where Joe Biden was in 2020 with key demographics, and it's because all Americans who have a little bit of common sense realize their lives are a lot worse off under her leadership. We need change. In this election, President Trump represents that change that we so desperately need.
I understand what you're saying. I mean, President Trump overtaking Kamala Harris in the Real Clear Politics presidential betting average for the first time since September. We've got a new Yahoo News YouGov survey also finding that Trump has erased a 4-point deficit among likely voters that he saw in the outlet September poll, and now he's tied there with Harris. Both candidates, however, receiving 47% of voter support. And that's my issue, Caroline. I mean, here we are talking about, these word salads that Kamala Harris gives. She never gives any details about any of her plans, what she wants to do. We hear, issues on the edge, like she wants to raise taxes and she wants to have a 25% unrealized gains tax, but never hearing actually a cohesive strategy for governance. And yet, look how close she is to Trump. Trump never stops talking about his plans. He's telling us drill, drill, drill. He's telling us extend the tax cuts. He's telling us about foreign policy. And yet, they're tied. How is that possible?
Well, we've always known it's going to be a tight race, Maria. Unfortunately, we are in a divided country. But if you really narrow down to these polls, especially in the battleground states, President Trump is making historic gains with demographics that Democrats need to win. Union workers, look at the Teamsters endorsement. More than 60% of their workers in their union said they are going to be voting for President Trump. That is historic, and it's why the Teamsters leadership, for the first time in many decades, decided not to endorse the Democrat in this race. If you look at Latino voters, I saw a new poll from NBC News this morning showing President Trump is leading in the Latino Sun Belt of Pennsylvania, where there's a majority Latino population. In fact, in one town that Democrats have always won, he's leading by double digits. If you look at young voters, Kamala Harris may have a slight lead, but she is lagging behind where she needs to be, where Joe Biden was in 2020. And so President Trump has very focused messages for all of these Americans who all share the same things. They want more money in their pockets. They want peace around the world. They want this war in the Middle East to end. They want the war in Ukraine to end. They want a secure southern border that's going to put them and their families first, not illegal immigrants first. And Kamala Harris has shown to be the opposite of a president. She is putting America last. And every time she speaks, every time she sits down for an interview, she proves how unfit she is to be the leader of the free world and the commander-in-chief of our military. Her 60 Minutes interview last night was a train wreck. And I hear she's going to be doing a lot more interviews in the coming days. I hope that she does, because again, every single time she sits down, she proves to the American people why she can't be trusted to lead this country.
Well, what states are you zeroing in on in terms of the battleground states? I mean, I'm hearing a lot about Pennsylvania, that if he wins Pennsylvania, he wins. I mean, the Philadelphia Inquirer is reporting that even in the deep blue city, working class voters are shifting toward Trump. In Philly, two bellwether counties, Erie and Northampton counties, also appear to be moving back to Trump ahead of the election, according to this new poll. The pollster signal of finding both counties favor Trump by 1 point, and he has room to grow his lead between now and November 5th. Erie and Northampton counties backed former President Barack Obama twice, Trump in 2016 and Biden in 2020. Swing states, Arizona and Nevada, you've got a new Suffolk University USA Today poll finds Harris leads Trump among Hispanic voters, but Trump has more gains among young male Hispanic voters compared to 4 years ago. So, Caroline, what states are you focused on right now, and will you be zeroed in on election night?
Well, since you mentioned Pennsylvania, there's no doubt the road back to the White House leads right through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's why President Trump has spent significant time there. He has a great bond with the people of Pennsylvania. You look at his rally in Butler, his big triumphant return, and he had more than 100,000 people show up. It was a spectacular evening, and we feel very good about our ground game in Pennsylvania. I'll give you a really encouraging statistic. In fact, in three historically Democrat-leaning counties, Bucks County, Beaver County, and Luzerne County, we are now outpacing Democrats with voter registration. We have flipped those counties red in terms of voter reg on the ground. That's a testament to President Trump's work ethic, going back to Pennsylvania repeatedly, but it's also a testament to our ground game, turning out these voters, getting them to register to vote, and educating them on how they can vote early for President Trump. That's a big part of this as well. So Pennsylvania, sure, but also President Trump is making great strides in the blue wall. Minnesota is a historically Democrat state that we're going on offense in. Michigan, Wisconsin, he's leading in Georgia, he's leading in Nevada, he's leading in North Carolina as well. And I would just say, let's not forget where the polls were in 2016. They had President Hillary Clinton up by nearly 10 points, and we all remember how that race turned out. President Trump supporters have always been misunderrepresented in the polls, and again, he's still polling better than he ever has. So that gives us a lot of confidence, but rest assured, we're not leaving any stone unturned. We're running this race like we are behind. President Trump is the hardest working person in American politics. He's going to be on the ground every single day between now and Election Day.
All right. Yeah. I mean, former First Lady Melania Trump told me she doesn't believe these polls either, that they're so close. Caroline, good to see you. Thank you so much. Caroline Levitt from the Trump campaign.